You know what's crazy to me? The amount of data that agency owners have that is so underutilized, it's insane. Even if you only have like 5 to 10 clients, you're collecting so much data on their leads, appointments, shows that you can use across all your clients and overall increase the chances of all your clients succeeding, which ultimately increases your retention. And if you can display this data to new potential clients that you're on sales calls, they have so much more trust in your process. It's unreal. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I'm going to share my screen. This is my own B2B ads tracking sheet, but I've got one specifically built for agencies with their clients. If you click down below, you can download it for free and it'll be a huge help when it comes to tracking your data. So the main thing I want to talk about today is a system to increase the sharp rates for your client. Now, I'm not talking about reminders, automation, anything like that. I'm talking about actually taking the real data from your clients and then giving it back to the clients so they can understand when the best chance of show ups are in their calendar. Let me show you exactly what I mean. So this is what I call my show rate heat map. All this does is it basically takes all my appointments, it looks at the time the appointment was booked for, and then it tracks the show rate for each of them individual slots. The cool thing about this is you haven't got to worry about time zones. So if you've got a client in Eastern time, another one on Pacific time, well, 9 a.m. for Pacific, although it's different to Eastern, it's still 9 a.m. for that local area, right? So don't worry about tracking individual time zones. Just look at the time of the appointment in the respective time zone. So like I said, if you're in 9 a.m. Pacific, you'd track that as a 9 a.m. appointment. And if you've got 9 a.m. Eastern, you still track that as a 9 a.m. appointment because of the fact that it's still 9 a.m. for whichever the local time zone was. So I like to have 12 a.m. all the way to 11 p.m. Obviously, you might not be taking calls at 2 in the morning, just so you got it there for whatever reason you need it in the future. Then what we have is we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all the days of the week. Then each of these columns, this first column here, that is the show rate for that slot. And the second column is the amount of data you're using to take that show rate. So if I look at this slot here, it's got a 50% sharp rate. However, I'm only taking 2 appointments for that, right? What I mean by that is out of all of my appointments, I've only ever had 2 appointments ever booked in for 4 a.m. on Monday. And I'm basing that 50% off them 2 appointments. And this is really handy to know because what if you didn't have this, you might look at 4 a.m. on Monday and go, oh, that's 50%. It's not like great, blah, blah, blah. But actually it's only basing it off 2 appointments. And you can say the same thing up here, right? I could say, oh, 5 p.m. is Monday. Oh my God, it's crazy. We have an incredible show rate. Well, no, you don't. You're only basing it off 1 appointment. So the data's so low and it just gives you that indication so you know how much you can actually trust that show rate for that slot. And so we have every day of the week, every time, and we can clearly see the heat map of what gives the best shows. So like I said, this is for my B2B ads. If you click down below, you can get access to the reporting sheet where we have this and essentially every single appointment for all your clients, right? Don't separate this out. Don't have like one sheet for each client. Have one appointments tab. And in that tab, have every single appointment you book for all your clients across the board inside that tab. Obviously, you can track whatever data you want, but the key thing here you need to track, right, is first of all, obviously, did they show? And the second thing is you need to track is what was the day of the week that the appointment came in and the time of appointment. I've got in Eastern because again, it's B2B ads. However, for you guys, don't put the Eastern, just do it whatever the time was in their local time zone. I'm not going to talk you through how to actually get this data pushed into this sheet because it's pretty simple. Just use Zapier, Make, whatever you want to use. It's not too hard. The key thing is the date the appointment was booked for. So whatever day the appointment was booked for, right, make sure you have that locked in. Then the formula you need for the day of the week is you want to put equals text, then put the cell the date the appointment was booked for, and then put comma, and then put in quotation marks, DDD. And that'll give you the full day of the week for whatever this date falls on. When it comes to the time of the appointment, format this inside Zapier Make. Whatever software you're using to pull this information in, the appointment information, inside the Zap, the scenario, whatever you want to call it, you can do a format, right? And you can format date and time to just give you the hour. I think this is pretty simple to do, but if you get really stuck and you don't know how to pull the time of the appointment in this format, just comment down below and I'll make a quick loom and I'll send it over to you. So once you've got all of your clients' appointments, again, it's all your clients' appointments. It's not individual for each client. Have all of your clients' appointments go into one sheet like this, and you've got the day and you've got the time of that appointment, again, in the local time zone, whatever that is. You can then start collating this data into your show rate heat map. So now what's the formula we need to be able to actually pull the information through from this appointment sheet and then actually do the calculation to work out what the show rate is? I'm going to copy down below this video in the description what this formula, like I'm going to write it all out for you, but I also want to break it down for you so you understand exactly how it works and you can make changes if you want it. So if I take one of these slots here, for example, this one here, 2 p.m., 71%, 24 appointments, that's obviously pretty strong. So what we have first of all is we have an if statement. The reason we have an if statement first is because if there are no appointments at that time, don't want it erroring out. It will just say like NAN or error or dividing by 0, obviously times by 0, all that kind of stuff starts to screw the Google Sheet up. So we want to make sure we have an if first, right? So what we're saying here is we're saying if, and then we've got this count ifs, right? If this formula is equal to 0, then I want you to just write out NA, right? Which is what we've got here. You can see NA, 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 NA. So what is a count ifs formula? Count ifs formula, you're basically giving Google Sheets a criteria for it to meet. And every time it meets that criteria, it's going to count it as 1. And the cool thing about this is you can have multiple criteria, right? So if you only had one criteria, there was just one thing you wanted to check, for example, does this day equal this or whatever it is, then you need a count if, right? A count if, you'd get rid of this S. It'd just be a count if. It's a one criteria. It's one thing you're checking. It's a count if. If you've got multiple criteria, then it's count ifs. You need to have this count ifs formula. Then what you're doing is you're basically giving it what you want it to check and what the criteria is. So for example here, I've got appointments VV. Appointments VV with the little exclamation mark here. I'm basically telling Google Sheets, I want to go and check the appointments tab for whatever I'm about to do. So this appointments, that is talking about this one down here, this appointments, okay? So we've got appointments, and then what I'm doing is asking it to check the column V, the entirety of column V, okay? So if I go to appointments now and go to column V, I can see we've got day of the week here. So what I'm saying in the show rate heat map, in this formula, I'm saying, right, check appointments VV, right? Check that column. If any of these days meet the criteria, and what's the criteria? The criteria is B2. If it meets B2, I want to count it. Well, what's B2? Well, I haven't got this any name here with apostrophe over here, right? It just says B2. If you haven't stated what sheet it is, it will just assume it's the sheet you're on. So because I haven't put anything at the front of this B2, it's literally just going to take it from the show rate heat map. Well, on the show rate heat map, where's B2? Well, if I move this up a little bit, B2 is this one here. Okay, so B2, I've merged the cells, so it's like across the whole thing, but basically B2 is equal to Monday. So if I go back down here again, what I'm saying is I want you to check appointments VV. I want you to count every single one of these that meet the criteria, which is B2. So basically what I'm saying is how many of these records match B2? Well, Monday's B2, so I can see, for example, one here, I can see one here, I can see one here, right? It's all pretty clear. So it's going to count up all the Mondays in that appointments, right? We don't just care about Monday. We also care about the time of the appointment, right? So now what we've got is appointments WW. So I'm telling Google Sheets to go to the appointments W column, and I want you to match everything that equals A15. So appointments, I can see it here, right? We've got W. Okay, great. Well, W's here. I can see all the different times for the appointments. Now, if I go back to here, what's the criteria? Well, A15 is the criteria. Well, okay, cool. So if I stick to A15, that one there. So I'm saying 12 p.m. So I'm basically saying, and when you combine these like this, I'm saying only count if they meet both of these. It's an and. It's an and statement, essentially, right? I'm saying count all the appointments that meet this criteria, which is that the appointment is on a Monday. And then also only count all the appointments that meet the same criteria as A15, which is 12 p.m. For example, if there was a Monday appointment, but it said 1 p.m., it wouldn't be counted here. It equals 0. The reason why it equals 0 is because it doesn't meet both the criteria. It needs to meet that A15 criteria, and it also needs to meet the B2 criteria. And so when it's counting that, if it equals 0, put NA, right? If this doesn't equal 0, that's what this second part is. So I'm saying, okay, if this equals 0, then just write NA. If anything else happens, if it doesn't equal 0, right, I want you to carry out this formula here, right at the end. So now for this formula, it's exactly the same as this one up here, right? So it's a count ifs, appointments VV B2, which is exactly the same what's here, right? So we're counting it, we're checking what day of the week is it? Does it meet the Monday day of the week? Then we're checking the time. Does it meet the A15 time, which is this one over here, right? Is it equal 12 p.m.? Then we've got one extra piece now. We've got another criteria, which is appointments FF equal to Y. So if I go back to appointments here, and I scroll to the left, the F column is here. And so I'm saying if it equals Y, count it. So that basically means, is it a show? Did it show up to the appointment? If it did show up to the appointment, that means this will be a yes. It'll say Y in the column. If it says Y, count it. If it doesn't say Y, just don't count it. So that means all of the yeses are here. Then what we're doing is we're dividing that to work out the show rate percentage. We're dividing that by the same thing, except for we're not going to put yes and no or anything like that. We're just going to take the same formula again, right? This one up here, because what this is doing here, this formula here is counting every single appointment, whether they show or don't show, because we haven't got the show as a criteria. So that means any record that meets this is going to be counted. With this count, if we want to divide by the total number of appointments, right? To work out the show rate, it's the total number of shows divided by the total number of appointments. So when we're looking at this, I can see count ifs, and we've only got the two criteria. Because again, we don't care if they show, we don't care if they don't show. We care what was the total number of appointments. So we haven't included the yes or no in here. What we could do if we wanted to be kind of weird and overcomplicated is we could add a count ifs, make it yes, make the criteria yes, and then add on the criteria equals no. So you do the criteria that equals yes, and then divide that by criteria equals yes plus criteria equals no. But there's no need for that because we just want to count every appointment. So we just have it in here like this. Okay. So now what we've got, so to go through the full thing again, if this formula equals 0, so if there's no appointments that match that day and time, put NA. If there are appointments that match that day and time, I want you to count the total number that have yes, that are marked as yes, so how many shows there are, and divide that by the total number of appointments. Then format that as a percentage. You can do that by clicking the little percentage sign up here, and that will give you the show rate. Then for the second column, all we want to do now is add up the total number of appointments, right? So again, it's the exact same formula again. We don't need any if statement here because if this equals 0, if the total number of appointments equals 0, we want it to say 0. We don't want it saying anything else. We want to make sure that if it says NA, it means there's 0 appointments, right? So for example, if I check this one here, this says NA and it says 0 appointments. It's like, oh, okay, makes sense. NA, 0 appointments. NA, 0 appointments, 0 appointments, 0 appointments. So we know it's working correctly, right? Which is great. So all we want to do here is just add up the total number of appointments. That way, then that gives us the weighting. We know, for example, when we look at this 80% show rate and we can see there's 30 appointments, that's quite a strong number. We know that the show rate for this particular slot is very good. So then what you do is you do this for all days of the week and every single time. It's the same formula and you literally can just drag it down, right? So if I go through here, you'll see it says B2, B2. This is always this one here is all B2 because it's based on Monday. However, what you'll notice is that this criteria, the time criteria changes, right? So if I go onto the 4 a.m., this is A7, then this is A8, then it says A9. I'm looking at this thing here. Then it says A10, then 11, then A12, because that's updating because this is changing. So once you build all this out, do this for every single day of the week. It's the same formula. It's the same exact way of doing things, except from, for example, with Tuesday, I'm now going to be looking at D2. Rather than B2, it's now going to be D2 because the day is here, which is D2, F2, H2, J2, L2, N2. But the times for each column will be the same because the times are being pulled from this row here. So this will still be A8, this will be A9, this will be A10, this will be A11, etc., etc. So once you've got all this data together and you can see it, why is this so powerful? Well, so many clients will tell you, oh, I don't do calls unless it's Tuesday afternoons or Thursday afternoons. My availability, I don't like having this time open. I want to be able to drink wine on the weekends. I want to do this, I want to do that. And their availability is massively reduced, which then means that they have a lower show rate. Client availability is the biggest indicator of show rate, so you want to increase client availability as much as you can. So now when you sign up a client and you're on their onboarding call and they're telling you, hey, I only do calls at 7 in the morning or whatever it is, you can show them this and be like, well, actually, based on all of our client data for the 30 clients we've got or whatever it is, literally the lifetime client data, we can see here that the show rate for Thursdays at 5 a.m. is 33%. So the fact you're only doing calls between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. means that you're going to be getting a pretty bad show rate, right? However, if on Friday you open up your afternoon slots, well, I can see that our show rate for 2 to 4 p.m., 74%, 82%, and 100%. So if you haven't got Friday afternoon available, you're insane. And this is also the really important thing is that you niche down, right? If you're only working with roofers, solar installers, gyms, med spas, dental, whatever it is, if you've got all different niches, then this doesn't work. But this really works well when you've got the same niche, which all you should have one niche. You shouldn't be doing multiple niches. If you've got the same niche, then you can collect all this data because you know that the people you're targeting for each of your clients have the same kind of habits, they have the same problems, and therefore the show rate is probably going to be very similar. Obviously, there are some nuances here. If a client is in some weird area or a client, you're going after a specific type of people for certain clients, it might not give you that much insight, but for 95% of your clients that haven't got these weird nuances, this will work really, really well, and it will show them why having certain slots available is so important. Also, when you're on a sales call and you've got prospective clients already giving you red flags like, oh, I only like to do calls in the morning, I don't like doing calls on the weekends, whatever it is, then you can literally load this up, show them like, hey, I know you say you don't do calls on the weekends, but we need you to, because at this time and this day, we have an 80% show rate, which is really, really important. And when you can show prospective clients data like this, they're gonna be so wowed about how organized you are and how on top of things you are. They're way more likely to buy from you than one of your competitors. So many agency owners don't have anything like this, that when you can show them stuff like this, the client trusts you way more than anyone else, and they're way more likely to actually buy from you. So if you want access to our full reporting sheet, which is usually exclusive only to Call Center Mastery members, click down below, click the link, I'll give it to you for free, and you can start building this out and wowing your clients and getting way better shows for them, because now you know which slots actually perform the best in terms of show rate. And obviously, if your clients are getting more shows, they're more likely to stay with you, which means they're going to keep paying you and you make more money. Hopefully that all makes sense. Let me know if you've got any questions down below in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video.